Sorry we're a few minutes late getting started, so we just had, glad we have a full room, and hopefully if you guys want to come back again, and you will, because we have a different subject every month, that you will register so we can have the proper amount of space and paperwork and everything here. So good morning. So welcome to the Senior Empowerment 2 Series, sponsored by Mature Move Solutions. I'm Stephanie Parson. I'm with Parson Realty Group and Mature Move Solutions. And we have Joelle, who's on my staff, who's running around here somewhere. But she's the young lady that calls and reminds you all. So how many of you are first-time attendees? Can you raise your hand? Okay, great, welcome, thank you. So we're glad you're here. Just a couple of reminders about how our seminar is laid out for you. So our panelists are gonna join us here in just a minute. We ask that you hold your questions to the end, and we've tried to give everybody at least something to take some notes on. So we have a series of questions to run through, and we're not gonna get deep into anything, but these guys, if you have more specific questions, we will have questions about 11 or 11:15. They'll also hang around afterwards if you want to engage them with any conversation specifically, and we'll have their information in the back room for you to pick out if you'd like to. So, all right, so we've also given you, most of you, an evaluation sheet. So if you could fill that out at the end and turn that in or leave it at the table, we'll get that picked up. So, all right, well, let's get started. So today's topic is the truth about how to pay for senior living. So if you guys would, our panelists, go ahead and introduce ourselves, tell us who you are, a little bit about yourself, and why we've got you here today.
Sure. My name is Ryan Gill. I'm with a company called St. Charles Financial Services. We're basically an independent financial planning and financial advice firm. So we provide financial planning from A to Z. We're local, we're independent, and that allows for more options. But no, I've been in the industry since I graduated college in 2001 in one form or another of jobs in the financial industry, and now I work directly with individuals and small businesses in the area.
Thanks, Ryan. Steve? Or Wilma? Whomever.
I'm short.
Yeah, okay.
I'm Wilma Schmitz, and I'm regional liaison with the CLAIM program. We're the Missouri State Health Insurance Assistance Program. We cover Medicare questions. We're unbiased, so we don't sell insurance. We can only help you understand. We're funded from the federal government and the state government just to help people understand Medicare. And you all understand Medicare already, right? Okay. So I've been in the business of social services for 42 years. I've been a care manager, and some of you may have remembered me a long time ago when I did a Aging Concerns segment on Channel 5 with Art and Jennifer many years ago, but it was very enjoyable. Graduate of Lindenwood University, and happy to be here with you today.
All right.
My name is Stephen Jones. I am the founder of Jones Elder Law. We are a law firm. All we do is estate planning and elder law. Amongst our practice areas is veterans benefits as well. We are located in St. Charles. We're on Bluestone Drive. If you had to kind of pick 2 points, Spiros is on one end of Bluestone, TGI Fridays is on the other. We're closest to TGI Fridays. We work with people 55 and up. We help them get their affairs in order, and we help them make sure that they live out their lives in the manner that they want to do so as they age, hopefully in place.
So unfortunately, we have a speaker who apparently had an emergency at their living center today. So Tammy Hempen, she was here last time. She's the executive director of Lutheran Senior Services at Breeze Park, which is out on Highway 94. So we're gonna try to fill in some gaps that she's not here, but none of us are experts on it, so we'll do the best we can. Breeze Park is a CCRC, or a life plan community, and they offer all different levels of living. So independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. And they are considered a private, Lutheran Senior Services, a private organization. They do have many other sites throughout the St. Louis area. They have 4. This lady back here's telling me. Maybe you can come up here. So the one closest is in St. Charles, which is Breeze Park. So we were gonna start off with actually questions for Tammy. So I'm gonna, I guess, just role play here, ask a question and then try to answer it. So you guys feel free to go ahead and have a seat here. Make yourselves comfortable. So what is a CCRC? So a life care community has all different levels of care, typically under one roof. Sometimes there will be different buildings, but they're all considered like one development and very closely located together. But at its highest level, it would be everything under one roof, okay? So it's designed to be kind of a one-stop shop for those looking for a community to retire at. And as your needs level rise, you're able to go to different areas in the building for higher levels of care. That sound about right, guys?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so payment structure for CCRC, that's where I'm not well versed in this. So I know that they can charge you an entrance fee. In general, for CCRCs, it can be anywhere from 90, 100,000 all the way up to 400,000 for our area. Depending on the size of unit that you select and I guess what level you enter in at. Some have no entrance fees. Most of them have a monthly rental fee. And specifically to Breeze Park, I know that you select how much you would be given back when you no longer need to live there. You get, the less money you get back, the less your monthly payment is. So
does everybody kind of understand what you're saying? So you write a check, all right? I don't know exactly what it is at Breeze Park, but let's say it's $200,000. So you write them a check, all right? Now when you write that check, there's an agreement that you enter in, and there's some percentage that you get back when you can no longer reside at that community. It could be 95%, it could be 90%, 85%, 75%. I don't know exactly what each ones are. So now what happens is you live there for some period of time, and for some reason you're not going to live there anymore. Well, at that point, then you're entitled to that percentage of your initial buy-in to be returned to you. Okay, that's what she's talking about when you get the money back. The percentage that you get back is inversely related to what you pay each month. You want a higher percentage back, you're going to pay a higher amount each month. So that's kind of the generic structure. I'm not telling you that's Breeze Park. I'm telling you that's the generic structure in that industry.
And in most cases, when you're in that type of situation, you are saying to them, I don't want to move ever again. I want to stay on this campus, that you can go from independent living to assisted living to skilled care or memory care. And that is what you're signing up for. And if you run out, and this is what I think you're talking about, Stephanie, is if you run out of funding, they make a promise to take care of you. So it's like having a mortgage and rent, and also guaranteed care. So it's very important to understand that when you go in, and if you decide, I don't like this, you won't get all of your money back, but you will get a portion.
I think one thing to clarify is that that's not all CCMs. That's Lutheran Senior Services model. Lutheran Senior Services model has a benevolent program that you can try to enter into. But you have to prepare a financial statement that they evaluate your eligibility for that benevolent program. So if I have $15,000 and a 10-year-old used car with 300,000 miles on it, I'm not getting into the benevolent program, okay? Now, if I have a $400,000 house and an IRA and some assets, then I may very well be able to get into the benevolent program. And then what I have is the knowledge that if I run out of money, if I stay there like my grandma did for 10 years plus in a nursing home, I'm not going to be told you have to leave. That's where the benevolent program could really come in.
Again, that is specific to Breeze Park, Lutheran Senior Services,
But
I guess.
most of the nonprofit communities, like St. Andrews has one, Cardinal Ritter has one, all of those are connected with a nonprofit, and there is usually a foundation to help with that. So it depends. Everything, when it comes to aging issues, it depends.
Okay.
Some of you caught that.
All right, so if a person has a long-term care insurance policy, can that typically be used to cover expenses at each level of care? For example, assisted living and skilled nursing.
So probably at independent living or villa type living, no. At assisted living, assuming you're getting assistance with the prerequisite, it's usually 2 activities of daily living, then yes. Now there is going to be a medical determination done before they're going to start paying out. I don't want to steal your thunder because
No.
there's elimination
Please
periods and
continue.
things like that. But basically, you have to be getting something that triggers the policy. So that's why the independent living in the villas, really you're just moving where you're getting somebody who takes care of the structure, not necessarily takes care of you. When you start in that assisted living level, normally you're saying, I need some help too.
So the answer would be a long-term care policy
It can,
potentially
Yep.
help cover some assisted living expenses.
right.
Thank you. All right. How does it affect people if they wait too long and have a health problem before deciding to move? Anybody want to tackle that one? In relation to a CCRC specifically. So the problem is you could be scrambling to find someplace. And, we are big advocates for planning ahead, educating, learning, being proactive, having that what if, and unfortunately, typically most of us are gonna be aging. I mean, what's the alternative? And then, later on, the alternative happens. But specifically for CCRC, they tend to hold skilled nursing for the residents that are already living there. Okay, so they get basically first ability on having beds. So you may not be able to, places may be full and you may not be able to get in at that point in time. And then you're having to, or your family's having to decide what's open right now. We don't have any choice. We have to go to what's available rather than where I would prefer to ultimately live. And we talked about a little bit about the benevolent fund there. So, costs are extremely, and they keep going up, it's extremely expensive. So we wanted to talk about some different ways that there might be some programs available to you, or talk more about, being proactive and having a plan in place. So a lot of times people say, honestly, probably the cheapest place you can live is probably in the home you're at right now. And I hear it all the time, people say, I'm not moving, they're gonna carry me out in a pine box. Okay, and okay, that happens, great, but unfortunately, it doesn't usually happen like that. As you age, you're not able to take care of the home you live in, and the home starts declining in value. As your health declines, your family kind of tells you, I'm not comfortable with you living on your own, we need to help you find some other place. So that's what we're here to talk about, the what if, or if that happens, you're not safe staying in your home anymore, what are the alternative options? But there does tend to come a time when there's falls or there's problems with med management, and it's really no longer safe for an individual to live on their own. So first up, we're going to talk about wealth advisement with Ryan. So it's expensive aging in place or going into a senior living environment. So the first step is to plan ahead.
Absolutely.
Okay, and so you can make those smart decisions in advance and fund the self-pay portion of it. So that's your out-of-pocket costs. So that piece of the puzzle is called wealth advisement, or retirement planning, financial planning, all falls under that roof. So Ryan, do you want to tell us about what a wealth advisor is and processes involved once they would meet someone in that capacity?
Sure. So whatever stage somebody is at in their life, save for the financial future. Like you said, be proactive. So that can be done, somebody can do that on their own, and self-insure that way, or self-manage the money that they have, or properties, or whatever the case may be. A wealth advisor, really that's kind of a nickname in the industry. There's not really a wealth advisor test that I took. There's really just an advisor test. So really an advisor is somebody that gives advice. Not all financial representatives are licensed to do that. So a wealth advisor, financial planner, they all kind of fall under a couple of tests that a professional like me has to take. You don't need to write this down, but it's a Series 65 and also a Series 66. So these are highly regulated individuals in my industry, and that's a good thing. That keeps us on, we have to help individuals, and it keeps the bad players out of the system. So not only do they have to pass a test, but now they're held to a higher responsibility. So we call that fiduciary responsibility. So somebody that is licensed to give advice. Fiduciary means they have to act in your best interest. So that's really what a wealth advisor or financial advisor does. They help not only advise somebody on the financial planning aspect of it, what to do with this account and what to do with that insurance, but that can be advice just in general with assets not managed by that wealth advisor or by that financial advisor. So there's kind of two roles. The financial advisor, if they're acting in your best interest, will help with advice on the whole spectrum, but then they'll also be responsible for, let's say, assets directly under their control. We call that assets under management. So what that advisor does then is going to be charged or charging a fee for that process. So sometimes it's a fee for a plan, so it could be a flat fee for doing a whole financial plan, and you have a bunch of to-do things, and then that's up to you to go do them. But also for investments that are held with that advisor, that's going to be what we call assets under management. So they can charge a percentage fee. Let's say it's 0.5% or 1%. They could charge a flat fee for the whole process, or they could charge just commission-based. So that just means that no matter what the product is, a fiduciary is trying to find out the products that are in that individual's best interest, and that could be a little bit of all of those things.
So Ryan, who are the other players, professional players, do you a lot of times engage and coordinate with and collaborate with for clients?
Great question. I'm not licensed to help with everything, or we're not in my industry. So, for example, with estate planning, that is definitely a part of a financial plan. So that's where we would have to cooperate or send a referral to an attorney, to draft up the trust, the legal works and all that. So that, and tax professional as well. So those are two things that I think the tax professional the legal professional and the financial professional all need to be working together to create the plan, for the individual.
All right, okay. So what is exactly, if I call it the self-insured piece, what exactly does that mean?
So self-insured piece means that there's all these programs that we're learning about today, but in general, we're all saving for the future, right? And planning ahead and being proactive, like she said earlier. So self-insured would mean I'm just going to save as much money as possible because I worked very hard for it my entire life. Now I'm at this stage of my life, maybe somebody's retired. Now what do? There's programs, but there's also, do I have enough assets saved to self-insure in case something happens? Let's say somebody is not insurable for, let's say, long-term care. Though somebody will come to me and say, I need long-term care insurance, but after they've described some health issues that they have, they may not be insurable. So now we're looking towards assets that they have to help pay for that, because now we have to use a plan B. So I would say sort of a plan B, but really the plan A, save as much as possible so you can pay for these things that you want, so you can live the life that you want during retirement.
I think if you think about self-insured, it's kind of what we described with Breeze Park. They're using their money to buy in, to guarantee them that residency. That's self-insured.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying, I worked, I created this, now I'm going to use that to cover my twilight years.
Where my profession comes in is kind of how do you keep what you have saved? How do you make sure, because as we get older, we need to be safer, we need to make more kind of conservative decisions with our investments, and usually we're shifting from, I've got this accumulated money to now income as well. So we help with that in the industry as well. I like the idea of working with subject matter experts. Well, Wilma's an expert in the Medicare area, so once we get to that topic in the financial planning, we usually default things. So when should I retire? The default is almost always 65 unless there's more information that comes in, because that's when Medicare kicks in. And then they say, that's interesting, let me hear more. And I say, hey Wilma, you're up.
So you know just enough about who to call and who to bring in.
It's all about the team, absolutely.
It's a team.
Team
Okay.
effort.
Always a team.
Okay, so why do some people not seek out the advice of, a wealth advisor or
Great
put this
question.
together?
Great question. I think trust is one thing. I mean, it's a crazy world. We're bombarded on the news with bad news all the time. So who do you trust and where do you go to? I think that's part of it. That's why referrals are important, working with somebody you know. And I think that's where we're working with a licensed, somebody that has that fiduciary responsibility. That's the industry saying, you don't have to worry about the trust part. We're going to make sure there's not a bad player. And speaking of which, that's it too. There's a lot of bad players out there, and people think, oh, I don't want to get into that. I don't know who to trust. Confusion is another one. So just not sure who to go to, who's licensed professionally to help. If it's it's great that they're nice, but they have to be able to have that fiduciary interest,
Or even if that's needed.
Correct.
Right? They don't even know that they need it or not.
Yeah.
So you said a true financial advisor has a fiduciary responsibility.
Correct.
Right?
Oh,
So that would be.
Legally by the law.
Okay.
And they're licensed by
Licensed by the regulatory agencies
of the state.
and also of there's securities license too.
Yeah.
Fancy word for investments. To even be able to sell those things, you have to pass a test, but then that extra responsibility. So it's by all these financial regulators, New York Stock Exchange, I can name them all, but it's all the alphabet soup of regulations, so.
Okay. All right. Okay, great. Thank you for the information, Ryan. So now we're going to talk about different programs that you may or may not be eligible for. So the first option we're going to talk about is not widely known, but this is the VA benefits. And Steve's going to speak upon that. Tell us what's the history of the VA benefit program as far as, senior living and disability.
Sure. So the VA is kind of like a lot of programs. There's a ton of different benefits in the VA system. The two that I think are most common when you start to talk about funding and or paying for care and senior living are disability compensation, which is where you were injured during your service time, and that service or your service was connected to that injury. And so they're paying you kind of like a workers' comp claim or any disability claim based on your percentage of disability, okay? That's not the most common because that does require some sort of connection to your service. The one that most people are talking about and most people are using is something called service pension. And the service pension program basically will pay you a certain monthly amount based upon your marital status, if you're a married couple, a single veteran, or a widow of a veteran, and then you start to have medical expenses and medical needs. That program, I'll tell you flat out, is probably one of the best programs that you can look towards as you're starting to do this kind of transitioning. Because when you start to look at independent living in some of these other areas, that can be used to help fund that.
Okay, show of hands, how many people here think that they might have VA benefits available to them? Anybody over here? Yeah. Okay, all right.
So I'll tell you.
Yeah, we'll tell you. Okay, so you talked about the two main programs. So tell us, what are the qualifications for the different programs?
All right, so the biggest qualification for the service pension is the service requirement. And so when people hear the word pension, they think, oh, I have to have served 20 years and retire. That's entirely not correct. You have to have served 90 consecutive days on active duty, 1 day during the period of war, okay? The other thing that's important, you don't have to have been where the war was going on in almost every case. So right now, we're doing a lot of Korean War conflict cases. And so our Korean War guys, I bet I probably haven't seen 2 out of 40 that have set foot in Korea, but they still qualify. So it's 90 consecutive days of active duty, 1 day during the period of war. If you are a widow, that's what your spouse needs to have served. That flips the switch, so to speak, and that generates your eligibility to start down the process. Now then there are other tests, okay? There is a medical test. Remember we talked about this just a second ago with long-term care. You need to be needing some sort of medical type of care, okay? Usually it's bathing, dressing, toileting, the ADLs. You could also have a cognitive diagnosis. If you have Alzheimer's, you have Lewy bodies, if you have Parkinson's, those types of things could trigger the service pension as well. And then there is an income, and then there is an asset test. And so what you're looking at when you look at all those things is, do you check all those boxes? If you do, then you can start getting up to about $2,500 a month tax-free if you're a married couple. You can get about $2,100 a month tax-free if you're a single veteran, and about $1,500 a month if you're a widow. And that's all tax-free.
So what about discharge status?
Discharge status, you do have to have a discharge that is other than dishonorable. So basically, most people that we see are honorable discharged, but if you have anything that is not dishonorable, it will be acceptable.
Okay, and what about assets?
So from an asset standpoint, up until 2018, it was the Wild West. You had too many assets on Monday, you could move them on Tuesday and apply to the VA on Wednesday and get the benefit. 2018, they came out of left field and said, not anymore. And so now they have a strict bright line test. It's $150,000 right now. It does not include your home, does not include your vehicle, does not include your personal belongings, your clothes, your furniture, that kind of stuff. If you have more than that, there are ways to render yourself eligible. But if you have more than $150,000, it does take some sort of additional planning to render yourself eligible for the benefits.
So I think that bears repeating.
Okay.
Okay. Assets do not include your home,
Your home,
your car,
your car, your
funeral.
prepaid funeral. It doesn't include your personal belongings, which is the stuff you have in your house, your clothes, your furniture, those types of things.
Okay. All right. Good to know. So as far as the income, is it being adjusted for medical expenses?
Sure.
How does that work?
It's called the IVAP test. Very creatively, that stands for income for VA purposes. And so the IVAP test starts with your gross income from all sources. So for most people, that's going to be Social Security, maybe some pension money, and that's gross income, okay? What you see go in your checkbook is not your gross income. That's your net, okay? And so what you do is you start with gross. Then you deduct from that all of your monthly recurring medical expenses, all right? So that would be Medicare Part B. That might be Medicare Part D. It's a healthcare supplement. And most importantly, it's the cost of an assisted living. It's the cost of in-home health care. It's the cost of paying your child to come in and take care of you at home so you can stay at home. It's the cost of a memory care. It's the cost of a nursing home. So let's take an example real quick. I make $3,500 a month. And I go to Breeze Park and I look at a facility and I say, I really like it here. I got some friends here. I really would enjoy it. And then they tell me, but it's $4,500 a month. Oh, that didn't work. Can't afford it, right? Well, if I'm a veteran, I can't. Because that $4,500 is a medical expense. So when I subtract that from my $3,500 income, my medical expense wipes out my income, and now I'm eligible for the full benefit for a veteran, which is over $2,000 a month. That gives me enough money to pay for it. That's why VA is so powerful, because it gives people opportunities that they wouldn't have thought they could have had.
So how do you apply?
Applying is a bit of a chore. I'm not going to lie about that. It's not easy. We chose to become accredited with the Veterans Administration so that we can help our clients apply. We only help our clients apply. I'm not trying to be mean to anybody, but if I said I'll apply for everybody, you'd see the traffic backed up from my office to here. You can go to a VSO, that's the Veteran Service Officer. They will do it. You can have a child or somebody close to you do it for you. There's a certain limited number of times any individual can do it without becoming accredited. So there's lots of ways to do it. It's a very paper-driven process. It's like anything else in the government. Paper, paper, paper. And you just have to keep filing it and keep filing it. One thing I will tell you, it's absolutely against the law to charge for filing your application. So if anybody ever says, I'll file your application, but you need to write me a check, they just broke the law. So I wouldn't use them because that's not the proper way to do it.
So I'm assuming it's very extensive as far as information that you need to provide, documentation.
It's formatting. I mean, here's my income, and you got to provide all the supporting documentation. So you got to have the original Social Security benefit verification document for that year. Here's my pension. Here's a letter from the pension company from Central States saying this is what my gross pension is. Here's all my deductions. You got to have the cost from the facility. You got to have the cost from your insurance companies. All that has to be documented, because what you're doing in that application is you're giving somebody that you'll never talk to, and neither will we. We're an attorney. We don't have anybody we can talk to at the VA either. You're giving it to this big black hole, and you're trying to give them a roadmap to get to the answer of, yes, write us checks every month.
And the first key is what document do you have to have?
The DD-214.
Thank you.
Okay. DD-214. Okay. That is the document that is your discharge paperwork that shows your service. That's what is going to basically start the claim or end the claim. If your service on the DD-214 doesn't show 90 consecutive days, one day during a period of war, you don't have a claim.
I think it used to be a process to get a copy of that, but I think
it can still be a process.
Is it still? Okay, I thought maybe you could do it online now.
In the perfect world, the client kept it, okay? If they didn't keep it, hopefully they followed the discharge instructions and they filed it in the county where they returned. That's the second easiest way to do it. If those two don't work, then you're gonna have to go to the VA. That's not gonna be the easy way to do it. There is an online way you can ask for it, and I can almost guarantee you that if you go to the VA or you ask for it online, you're going to be told that your record's burned up. Okay? There was a fire at the records center,
Huge fire.
and there was a number of records that were destroyed. Okay? It's not all of them, but for some reason almost everybody who asks is told their records are gone. It's about 15% were destroyed. But what you do is you tell them, that's fine, I need you to recreate my records. A lot of times that's enough for them to go ahead and find something and give it to you, because they don't want to do that. In the worst case scenario, if your records really did burn up, then you do have to go through that recreation process. We had one case where it just was dragging on and on and on. We couldn't get them to get it to our client. We couldn't get it to our client. Just so happened that that particular client knew a sitting senator. The senator made a phone call, and within 48 hours, presto, they had their document.
Yeah.
So, Steve, I know when we were talking before, you said claimants are often told by VSOs that they don't qualify.
Right.
So, talk to us about that by just taking that as the rejection and not
So-
proceeding to.
Yeah,
Fight harder.
I think that was kind of in the biggest problems section we were talking about. That what are the problems? What is the difficulties with filing for VA? And I think probably one of the biggest things is the misinformation, the lack of understanding. So what happens is we all have somebody who goes to a VSO and they say, I want to file for VA, okay? And let's say it's my example of the person who looked at Breeze Park. And so the VSO looks at their income and says, you have too much money, you can't apply. You'll be rejected. That's true, because they haven't moved into Breeze Park yet. What they fail to tell them is, move into Breeze Park, write your first check, now your medical expenses exhaust your income, now you're eligible. So a big problem that we see out in the industry is people are getting the wrong information because they're not told how to become eligible, okay? How do you do this? Not just, oh, you don't qualify. We have it all the time for people who are living at home. If you're living at home and your child is coming in and providing you a tremendous amount of care, well, you're not going to qualify for VA unless you do what's called a caregiver agreement and you start paying the child for coming in. Now you qualify because you have medical expenses, and that becomes something where really the VA is paying the child for coming in.
So, and another thing we talked about is failing to plan for a sale of a home.
Oh yeah, that's huge. So your home is exempt, all right? And this is true in Medicaid and VA. We see this all the time. People hear the word exempt, and I'm going to tell you all right now, that does not mean safe, okay? That's what people hear when we say exempt, though. What exempt means is they're not going to count it against you. They're not going to include it in the assets that they're going to try to make you use. That's what exempt means. So let's say that we have a client come in. They don't tell us about their house. We don't even know it's there. And so we file their VA application. We get them set up on VA. They're in Breeze Park. They've got the $2,000. They're making their payment every month. What do you think happens when their property tax bill comes? I like it here. I don't want to keep paying property taxes on that home. So what do? They sell it. All right? What is not exempt? Cash. And that's what you just converted your exempt home into. So now your $200,000 home that was exempt is $200,000 in your bank account, and how much can you have? $150,000. You're getting kicked off the VA benefit. And there is a method, it's called a Veterans Asset Protection Trust. This, I don't want to go into it too far, but basically in that case, we're going to shift our veteran's home into that Veterans Asset Protection Trust so that when it's sold, the transaction doesn't cause them to lose the benefits. So you can still have the home, you can still sell it, you can still have access to the money, but you can do it in such a way that it doesn't kick you off benefits.
If you know about it.
If you know about
take
it.
the right steps.
If you do, if you
right?
plan ahead.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Medicare. So Wilma,
Yes. It's okay.
she's
It's okay. It's okay.
How many of you are receiving Medicare benefits currently?
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so let's talk about, we were gonna talk about Medicare and Medicaid, why they named them so close. I constantly get them confused, but we're gonna start talking about Medicare. So
Okay.
what exactly is Medicare, Wilma?
Everybody here that's over age 65, or if you are disabled, you have the option of having Medicare. Medicare was started in 1965, so was Medicaid. Okay? Harry Truman, first person to ever receive a Medicare card because he didn't have any health insurance. Okay? And he had worked to try to get health insurance for older adults. Why 65? Because at the time that legislation was drawn up, the average age of a person's life was 70. my 92-year-old mother, okay? Okay, so that's why 65. Medicare is a federal program. If you've worked 10 years, 40 quarters, you qualify for Medicare Part A at no additional cost to you. Part B is optional, but if you don't have Part B or have some type of outpatient coverage through a retirement health insurance, then you will have to pay a penalty. Okay? Every year, for those that have retiree coverage, you need to have a letter of credible coverage. It should be printed in gold because that's keeping people from having a penalty. And penalties with Medicare add up very quickly. Okay? So, think of Medicare as a billing process. Who's going to pay the bill? Medicare was never intended to cover all of your medical costs. 80% federal government, Medicare, 20% on you. 20% can add up very quickly with the diagnosis. So the federal government came up with Medicare supplemental plans at the same time of Medicare to help pay that 20%. Medicare supplemental plans are Medigap plans. Everything in the government has two names, just let you know, okay? So Medigap plans are regulated by the state, and in our case, it's the Missouri Department of Commerce and Insurance, and they say to the plans, the insurance plans, you can offer coverage to take care of that 20%, okay? And there's all kinds of different levels, always, of insurance coverage, okay? Along with, believe it or not, another series of letters, okay? So Medicare supplemental plans were going so high, people said, wait a minute, I can't do this. I can't pay out $300 for a plan I don't even use, okay? And 300 is pretty high, okay? So they came up with a plan that would bundle Part A, Part B. There's a new Part D that came out in 2008 that was prescription drug plans. You mix it all together, you throw extra benefits in there, and that's called Medicare Advantage plans, okay? Those blasted commercials, okay? One, you should see fewer of those. We just heard we're working on Medicare for 2024. And they have told the insurance plans to stop doing those things because those celebrities and retired football players, they don't have a Medicare Advantage plan, okay? So the Medicare Advantage plan is pay as you go. You don't go to the doctor, you don't have to do, anything but your premium. If you have a supplemental plan, you know how to budget for at least 12 months. You know that that's going to be a fixed cost for that premium. The state of Missouri, I'm going to shut up because I could go on forever. I love Medicare. I studied Medicare for many, many years. But one of the things that we have a very, very great way of looking at supplemental plans every year you can look and see if your plan says to you in August, we're gonna raise your rates 10%. You can call our organization that is a nonprofit, and we do not sell insurance, but we can tell you what's out there. You can change companies. You can go to a company, let's say G Plan, okay? G as in good. Wait a
Where in the
minute.
alphabet do these plans go?
But see, it's okay, Stephanie, it's okay. It's okay.
It's so confusing.
No, it's not. Okay, a supplemental plan. You can go from A to N. Remember I said all these alphabet things, okay? So G is a plan that's right in the middle, covers a lot of stuff. Every August, if a person signed up in August, they get to change. They can go from XYZ company to ABC company, which I should not use letters. Okay, so it's okay, that's what we're here for. Claim counselors are trained by the federal government and the state government to help people. We were created at the same time as Medicare because the government knew it was gonna be confusing.
Do you see why I defer?
It's okay.
I don't know how you people all have this figured out, because I'm glad I'm starting a few years before I qualify, so.
Some people don't, they just talk to their friends, they talk to their family, and they can get in trouble. Because, number one, real quick, and I'll get off my soapbox. Number one, the Veterans Administration does not talk to Medicare. Does that make sense? No, but they don't, okay? Number two, if a person talks to their friends and relatives and they have a federally retiree plan, and they listen to one of those commercials, or their friends have said, oh, this is so good, it is the best thing since sliced bread, and they sign up, they lose their federal benefits, their retiree benefits, their employer benefits. There are some employer benefits that are better than Medicare.
Yep.
Better. Why would you listen to somebody that played football back in the 60s, 70s, that says he knows? He was a paid spokesperson. There you go.
Thank you, Wilma.
You're welcome, Stephanie.
I love it.
Okay, all right, well, yeah, I'm gonna have you on speed dial there so I can call you with all my questions.
It's okay, I'm here for a second.
So let's talk about skilled nursing, okay, and about rehab.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay,
Okay.
you just talk about it then. So tell us what's covered and what people think is covered and what they need to know.
Number one, you go to the hospital, they kick you out after 4 days because you can heal better outside of the hospital because they're always waking you up, okay? They send you to skilled rehab. You pay nothing if you've been discharged from the hospital to go in for physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. You don't have to pay for anything for the first 20 days. Everybody here should know that you don't stay in rehab for 20 days because you will heal better in your own home. You can still have Medicare cover you once you've been discharged for skilled nursing. So as long as it's skilled Medicare will help pay for it. If a person needs to have in-home care, someone come in to help them bathe and things of that nature, Medicare will not pay for that. Medicare will not pay for nursing home care. Well, Medicare is supposed to take care. No, Medicare never, ever said that they would take care of you unless it was a medical necessity. So room and board at a skilled nursing facility, permanent residents, they have to find another mechanism to pay for that room and board. Okay, I'm looking at faces. You're not passing out, you look confused, okay?
So are you saying after 20 days?
Skilled care is rehab. So most rehabs are part of a long-term care facility, nursing home. If you become a permanent nursing home resident, Medicare will only pay for your medical care, not your daily living. That's when the other M, you know, Medicare and Medicaid, it's M&M. And M&Ms are really tasty, but not this M&M Foundation, okay? Medicaid is for people that have depleted their assets unless there's a way of putting them into a trust, and that's when you call an elder law attorney. But Medicaid, straight Medicaid, is when you have exhausted your assets, you have limited income, and the state and the federal government will help take care of you. Okay? I'm gonna start bringing smelling salts. But that's what Medicare and Medicaid, and I'm sure
Yes.
Steve's gonna say
Yes.
something about that.
So, just for clarification purposes, you can get coverage if you are you need skilled nursing for a short period of time, like rehab. Okay. What about when your needs are that you need that skilled care all the time?
Medicare's not gonna pay for that. That's gonna be Medicaid or self-pay.
Oh,
Or long-term care.
Or from the long-term care insurance and some,
Yeah, that's we China.
okay.
So I
Alright.
think that two things I would add to what Wilma just told you. What we see people having is they get discharged from the hospital. And this is when a lot of families are coming to us because they don't know what's gonna happen. They're not clear, and a lot of times you don't know till the last moment, is my loved one coming home? Is my loved one not coming home? Okay? And so what happens is you're going along in that rehab journey, and at some point, it cuts off. And you're either gonna be told, bring in a check for $9,000, or you can go home, okay? And so that's a big planning point for families. Hopefully you've planned well in advance of that, but a lot of families haven't. And so that's a real big point in time where they're trying to figure that out and figure out what to do and how not to leave if they've got a spouse at home, how not to leave them eating rice cakes and can't have the lights on, okay? The other thing I think is a real big point in misconception is hospice. I've had a number of people transition to hospice and they believe that hospice pays for everything. It does not pay for room and board at a nursing home. It will pay for the medical side that you're getting on hospice, but the room and board is still on you. And so you still have to have a methodology, even if you go into hospice, for how you're gonna pay room and board if you're in the nursing home.
Okay, and Medicaid, requirements or qualifications for that is basically, you have to show financial.
Right, the whole Medicaid system is referred to generically as an impoverishment system, okay? So when you start with that word, not good for you guys, okay? Impoverished is not usually a word you're looking for when you talk to your financial advisor or anyone else. So essentially what they're saying is if you're a single individual for Medicaid to help you, you get to keep $5,301. That's it. Everything else, they're gonna want it. Sell your car, you know, sell your stocks, sell your bonds, write checks, liquidate your IRAs, you name it. Get down to $5,301, now we'll help you.
Look back.
Okay?
Yeah.
Don't
yeah, I was
forget
gonna
look
say-
back.
I won't
Yes,
forget look
yes,
back.
please don't say, don't.
Okay, Steve, talk about the
So-
5-year look back period.
There is something, so what we do, okay, our clients don't, and I'm not trying to brag on us, people who do this. What we do is we protect our clients' assets from having that spin down. Our clients don't write checks to get down to $5,301. Our clients are putting money aside to protect it, okay? And so in the context of putting money aside to protect it, you have to remove it from that individual's name. And in the application process, there is a question on there that says, have you made any gifts or transfers for less than fair market value in the last 5 years, 60 months? And you have to tell them about it. Well, yes, yesterday I gave away $190,000 to my son, okay? That is the look back. What did you do in the last 5 years? They get to look at that, okay? Everybody follow me? The second piece to this is the penalty period. Once you tell them that you have made gifts or transfers for less than fair market value in the last 5 years, they're going to talk to you about the penalty period. The penalty period is a period of time where they will refuse to assist you with your long-term care even though you only have $5,301. All right? The way they calculate the penalty period is they divide the amount that you have transferred by $6,894. That's the Missouri penalty period divisor. So if you want to figure it out, for every $6,894 you set aside to protect, you're going to have to figure out how to pay for 1 month. All right? Now, what does that all mean? What that means is the old advice that you used to get. When my grandmother went into the nursing home, my grandmother was in the nursing home for 9.5 years. Okay? She was the case you hear about. Completely healthy, but didn't know anybody was in the room with her. And so what did people tell you back then? Move all your assets, give them to somebody else and apply. You'll get Medicaid. Okay? And people still to this day say that. Give all your stuff to your kids. You can give stuff to your kids. But you can't give everything to your kids because you have to have a plan in place to pay through the penalty period. So when we are working with a client and they're coming in and they're saying, it's important to me to leave some portion of my assets to my child. And it may not be for all of you, so don't take that as a generic statement, because not everybody cares if they leave assets to their kids. Come on, this is serious. There are some people who do, there are some people who say, I gave them an education, that's it.
I can vouch for that. I can vouch for that in my profession.
And so, if that is important to you, then you can devise a plan, and in the worst case scenario, we could be putting somebody in the nursing home today, have done pretty much no planning, and still expect to save about 65 cents of every dollar. Okay? That's just the way the math works, Jim.
So, question. Wilma, you have people who call you and ask you a lot of questions and everything.
Mhm.
So, do you tell them, hey, there's a workaround this, or
No,
there's
no,
okay.
no. Working for a nonprofit organization that's funded by the federal government and the state government, I would not do that. I would suggest that they call an elder law attorney to get legal advice. Their bank in some cases, if they have, if they're trying to preserve assets for the future generation. What I will tell people, when they call our office, they receive a referral. One of our counselors will call the person back and ask the question what the referral is all about. If it's something that is legal, we refer to legal services or the Missouri Bar or elder law attorney.
Thank you. All right, so we talked a little bit about Medicaid, 5-year look back. Any other programs or care types in that realm? No?
Sorry. So Wilma just mentioned a Miller's Trust. So Miller's Trust is a very specific type of vehicle that you use basically when your income is high, okay? So the Miller Trust allows you to place your excess income into this trust, not have it counted against you, and it gives you access to certain insurance programs and other programs that are income-based programs. And so that's another technique that can be used when you see somebody who has that kind of excess income, and that's preventing them from getting access to certain benefits that they could benefit from or be better off with. You know, one of the things that happens to people is there's kind of this process of where they may have a little bit too much, but not enough that it really makes a huge difference. And so you've got to figure out how to get them the maximum usage of what they do have. You know, as far as anything else, the one thing I would tell everybody here, and it's probably the thing that we do the most of, and that is, how many married couples here? Married couples? All right. So I will tell you the number one thing that when I'm sitting in a meeting with a family and I ask them what's important to you, it is making sure that each other's protected, okay? So I'll tell you in my case, my dad, it was his mother that was in the nursing home for 9.5 years. We promised him he would never go to a nursing home, okay? I do all right. I could afford to pay for his nursing home if I had to. And he did okay too, so he could. The problem was he's 6'3", 215 pounds, and he developed a brain tumor at 69 and was paralyzed all of his left hand. You can't stay home when that happens. Your home wasn't designed for that. And so we had to place him into a nursing home. In the state of Missouri, you do something called a division of assets. If you look at the division of assets, my mother was 68, my dad was 69 when he developed a brain tumor. They would have taken 74% of all my mother's assets. Okay? So when I sit with families and they talk about what's important to them and they say, we want to protect each other, I cannot stress to you enough, you want to have what we call spousal protection language in your legal documents. Okay? Everybody does a trust. Doesn't matter if you're an elder lawyer or not. You go up and down these streets, every lawyer is going to tell you they do a trust, they do a power of attorney, they do wills, all that kind of stuff. And they do, and I'm sure they're fine. But if you want to protect your assets, they better have the spousal protection language in it that you get from the elder lawyer type community. Because when I did my parents' planning, my mom didn't lose a thing. Okay? And I think that's what most families are looking for. Because whether or not they want to leave anything for their kids, they almost always want to leave something for each other. So I would encourage anybody who is not sure, you should find out.
Okay, thank you. Wanted to talk about Medicaid. Does every place accept Medicaid?
It does not. And so when you're talking, we've talked a little bit about continuum of care, we've talked about the different places. Your independent livings, your assisted livings, your memory cares, generally you're not going to take Medicaid. Those are almost always going to be private pay. In assisted living, for very specifically licensed assisted livings, there is a small community-based Medicaid benefit, but not enough to make a difference. So when you're talking about Medicaid, you're almost always talking about the nursing home. Now, that does not mean every nursing home takes Medicaid, okay? Every nursing home makes their own decision as to whether or not they are going to accept Medicaid. And not only that, but they then make a decision as to how many beds they are going to have that are Medicaid beds. So when you are, like when we're talking about a client who's coming in that rehab process and they're not sure what's going to happen and they don't know where they're going to go, the questions we're having them ask are, do you take Medicaid? Okay, because if the facility says no and you can't write a check for $9,000 for very long, you've got to have an alternative, okay? And if they do take Medicaid, the second question is, do you have any beds? Because in some cases, there could be a multi-year wait list for a bed. And so you could be in a Medicaid facility, but essentially not have any options because there's not going to be a bed available for an extended length of time. So you want to know that kind of information in that process so that you're prepared for what you have to do.
And beyond that, there's male and female.
Exactly.
Oh.
So when you're asking about, do you have a Medicaid bed, it is harder to find a bed for a male because there are fewer males in the nursing home and they are semi-private rooms. So you're going to have a roommate in almost all cases. So it's easier generally because there's going to be typically more females in the nursing homes. So there's more female beds available.
So I know recently, well, a year or so ago, having to make some phone calls to different retirement communities about accepting Medicaid, and the places that even said they accept them, they don't want to, they want you to come in, they want you to private pay for at least 2 years, is what the question was always to me. Well, maybe we might be able to help you out. Can they private pay for 2 years? So what does private pay for 2 years look like? It could be, you
Well,
know.
depends on the facility, but if you assume that you're writing a check for $9,000, yeah, maybe you've got income that cuts that down a little bit, but you're talking, you know, easily hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right. Yeah.
I think that goes back to your point of having a plan.
Having a
Okay?
plan, yep.
So our clients are usually going to plan ahead, because that's the reason they come to somebody like us, is they want to be prepared for this. So some of the things you can do is you can have your name on the list well in advance of going there. You can start to do things to try to prepare for that ahead of time. And you also can have a very strong understanding of the communities in your area and what their wait times are. They vary drastically. Some places you could probably walk in and get a bed today. It may not be your first choice. Okay, I'm not saying it's terrible, but it may not be your first choice. Other places, it could be 4 years.
And there's an organization that you can call, it's called VOICE, Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. And they have a listing from the state of all the facilities and whether or not they have Medicaid beds. VOICE is a partner with the claim program, so we have counselors actually embedded in that organization, and it's an excellent resource for anyone to get unbiased information about the long-term care facilities in this region.
Zach, I think, is it Elizabeth that runs that
No.
phone line? No?
Oh, of that line?
Line, yeah.
Oh, okay, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, okay.
All right.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so, let's talk about, so you may not be eligible for VA, and you may not be eligible for Medicaid. So we were talking about being self-insured. So long-term care is an option, right?
Long-term care insurance.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so how do we insure this risk? You know, the risk that, hey, you either don't want to pay for, you know, these facilities out of pocket. The average in Missouri, by the way, I looked that up before coming here, the average nursing home in Missouri is about $36,000 a year. Good news is, it's one of the lowest in the country, you know,
Yeah, that
for nurses.
sounds-
Real low. It
Yeah.
sounds
Well, that's-
real low.
That's the rural area.
There's a lower, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I just.
Sorry, quick Google search.
The average, the
Yeah.
average, so the penalty period divisor is designed to represent the average. The reason it doesn't work for us is because that's including the very rural communities,
Yeah.
which are much less expensive. You're gonna write a check for, you can count somewhere between 8 and 10 grand a month in this area.
Yeah.
So the more popular areas, gotcha, yeah, so, but, you know, so that being said, it's a cost, you know, and what do you do? So insurance in general, what is insurance? You pay a premium, right? And you're shifting the risk from yourself over to the insurance company. So that's really what long-term care insurance is designed to do. The bad news is there's fewer and fewer carriers, but the ones we work with, we're always on the look for, you know, changes in that industry. There used to be several, now there's just a few. But what that is yeah, you're paying a premium for the risk that you should need long-term care and the activities of daily living, like Steve said, that's what triggers that benefit. Then it starts paying. Okay, so it's a pure. You're paying for the what if, is purely the case.
So can you receive benefits if you are at home
Mhm.
and paying?
Great question. So not all long-term care insurance is the same. Very important to ask of that company, or if you get a quote from someone, one of these companies, how much is it going to be, okay? And is it going to cover things like home care? A big percentage of folks have a spouse that just takes care of them at home. And that's great and wonderful, but there's still costs involved there. What if that spouse is still working? There's a lot of other variables there involved. So it's important to say, hey, is this just a nursing home long-term care insurance, or is it at home as well? So very important to have both of those. So that's one option. That's pure long-term care insurance. The other that's becoming more popular is what we call a hybrid long-term care insurance and life insurance policy. Yeah, so these are really nice because you're not, so the question, what's the downside of long-term care insurance? You pay these premiums for years and years and years, and you live to be 120, and you never needed the care, okay? Well, that benefit never kicked in, so we call that a wealth transfer at my office, meaning you paid a bunch of money and you didn't really have to. Well, we can't predict the future. That's what insurance is for. So these hybrid policies came around because, one, what happens if I don't need the care? Well, in a hybrid policy, it's building up cash value, so you kind of have an investment arm of it as well. So you never really feel like you paid into it, you'll never get anything out. But there's also the death benefit factor, so just like life insurance, if you pass away, the death benefit pays. If you live to be a long time and you need the care, the long-term care insurance pays. And what happens is that pays out of the death benefit. So if that makes sense. So let's say a policy has a $200,000 death benefit and the person needs the care, it's gonna start reducing that death benefit. The more you use, the lower the death benefit that pays when that person passes away. But the whole time, let's say you live to be 120, you don't need the care, and I just wanna take some money out and give it to the kids or the grandkids at that point. That's where the cash value comes in. You completely cancel the policy and it's done, So that one is the kind of the biggest hybrid and kind of gives your what ifs a hedge against all those areas.
And that's just called what is it called?
We just call it a hybrid long-term care
Yeah.
policy.
Hybrid?
And all those policies that are sold in Missouri, the Department of Commerce and Insurance has a list. And we encourage people, because they usually call us, we encourage people to look at the list of those plans that are sold here in Missouri so that they can look at the different cost factors, research.
Lots of companies are traditionally life insurance companies are
Yes.
getting into that space now. Instead of offering just long-term care insurance, traditional long-term care insurance, what we call it, like Nationwide is a good example. So they offer hybrid policies.
Yeah.
So more and more are getting involved in there because of competition, and that's good.
So when should people begin looking at purchasing long-term care insurance? What age?
We usually in their mid-50s, so approaching age 60 is usually when we seriously start suggesting it. And what we'll tell clients in that financial planning meeting from A to Z, we're obviously going to have priorities. And I've got some folks, I'll say, okay, with long-term care, we're going to talk about it eventually, but for now, we're going to put a pin in it and wait until you're, getting up to that age. But it needs to be discussed as early as possible, so we're not scrambling at the last minute. If somebody has some health concerns that kind of run in the family, then the earlier the better.
Okay, all right, so real quick, I want to ask a couple more questions about the long care insurance coverage. What about people, do you recommend that if people have older policies that they get them out and review them or
Absolutely.
consult with somebody? Okay.
Annual review on any policy or any investment you have is always a good idea because the industry's changing, especially in that long-term care space.
Okay, so what are we talking about? It varies cost depending on age and health. So can you give an example of maybe what somebody would be looking for?
We run quotes for people. It just, of course, they have to go through what's called the underwriting process. They have to be healthy enough for the insurance company to accept them as a client, right? But in general, so a healthy individual, I ran a quote for somebody that's age 71 in this case. The premium for one of the companies is about $6,500 per year. So that's traditional long-term care insurance. So that's the traditional route. The hybrid life insurance, there's a lot of variables at play there, so it's not really appropriate to give a quote there, but you want to have a certain amount of coverage in the death benefit, and the healthier the individual, the less expensive it's going to be. The less healthy somebody is, the more the cost goes up.
Okay.
So,
And when you're looking at $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year, and paying out of pocket for coverage.
And it's similar to life insurance.
I mean, it looks like a much better value when you put that into perspective.
Yeah.
Yes.
We always say the what-if alternative is usually a lot worse. We'll see people, I've seen people with hundreds of thousands, if not millions, and they don't want to, they saved all this money for so long, they have a plan for it. Usually the plan is not to spend that on long-term care insurance, just long-term care in general. A long-term care insurance allows them to focus on leaving money to heirs, maybe they've got a business they want to take care of, et cetera.
And can long-term care insurance help cover for if somebody's getting care in the home from a family member?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
great question.
Yeah.
So in-home care, but it depends on the company.
Yeah.
So definitely a question to ask.
Real quick, I had an experience with long-term care insurance. My sister worked for the federal government for 30 years. The federal government offered that the very first long-term care insurance plans. She got a basic plan, she called me. I'm a social gerontologist by education and trade as well. And I said, oh, add on to it, add on. She was healthy. It came into play when she was diagnosed with glioblastoma, brain cancer. She lasted 15 weeks. She was able to stay in her home with 24-hour care with no additional cost to her. And the last month in hospice care that took care of the room and board when she could no longer live in her home. So was long-term care insurance the best thing she ever did?
Yeah.
It really was. So it's good if you can get it as early as possible.
Good point, good point. Well, how about let's give our expert panelists a round of applause. So we ran long, but we do want to take questions.
On the long-term care insurance, I have a friend who bought it quite a while ago, and she's covered for life. But now when I was shopping for this last year, it's like, oh no, it's only 3 years they will pay, or 5 years. You know, what's your experience now?
It varies, it depends on the company, and depends on the policy, so that's a very good, that's a very good point. So usually the statistics on the average nursing home stay is usually what that long-term care insurance company is going for. So if the average stay is, let's say, 3 years, that's why you're saying only 3 years. If you want one that covers lifetime, if somebody stays in the facility for 20, 30 years, that's way past the average, but it's probably gonna end up costing more if that's the case. So it really just depends, but the industry is changing. It could be also an older policy, and they're starting to restrict that and make it more, more by the average rather than the longer term. So a lot of these companies got themselves promised a lot and weren't able to deliver, so then they stopped offering long-term care, but it's just a matter of what policy and what company.
So it'd be a good idea to go consult with somebody who's a broker or
Yep.
deal, yeah, okay. All right, yes ma'am.
I've got my card in the back.
So I worked in a university at TIA Craft, and was offered long-term, and took it, been paying for it ever since. I want to say that it was, back then, I think I might have been in my 50s. I don't remember exactly when I took it out. But I think woman just said something about her sister increased it. I've never increased mine, so I think mine pays like, I want to say $100 a day, which is like about $3,000 a month, which what you're pretty much saying is not very much.
But look at your policy. If you don't have a copy, you can't find your policy, the company can find your policy, and you need to review it annually, so so you can plan.
Yeah, because actually TIF, they switched it over, they stopped doing it, and now it's not live.
Even more reason.
Even more reason, okay.
Did you have an inflation rider?
I have no idea.
So that would be a big thing to figure out, because you might have had $100 when you purchased it, and if you had an inflation rider, which is a huge provision to have, that $100 climbs. If
Okay.
you didn't and it's static, then yeah, you lose ground every year, because the cost of care goes up about 8% a year.
Okay. Great.
Thank you. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
When you talked about the CCRCs and the buy-in, do they all, well, I guess not everybody has those, but when they do, say like Breeze Park, is it only a certain buy-in cost? Do they only have one cost that you buy in with, or is there several different?
So I know they give options based on how much you are going to be set up for a refund when you no longer need to live there. So if you sign up to get less back, then your monthly rent is also lower too. So
Okay.
they have a whole,
Okay.
options, okay?
Okay.
But I'll tell you, there are not that many CCRCs in
Okay,
existence,
you have never heard of them.
okay? So there's a lot of things to look out for, but there are not that many around to begin with.
Is there a way I could find out where they are, or?
You can call me and I will give you that information.
Okay, what's the number?
You can, Joe, I'll have information from everybody at the back, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me where you would shop for that long-term care insurance? Because everything I've seen is considerably more than what you look.
Yeah, so we work with basically a kind of a long-term care brokerage, is what we do. So basically, through me, this guy, works with us, and he helps me stay on top of the latest regulations. Because if I dealt with only long-term care, then I've got a lot of clients that need help with other things, So that's why we use this individual for a reason. So it's kind of like a broker, but he focuses just in that space, and we partner with him. So he relies on me to meet the people that meet the need, and then we all talk together. Yep.
Basically, from what I've looked, it's at least 2 times, if not 3 times more than what you potentially.
Right, and lately we've seen a lot of premium increases from these long-term care insurance. So the traditional approach, either companies have gotten out or they just keep raising the premium every single day. They have the right to do that, unfortunately. And that's another reason why these hybrid policies have become more popular. Because if I'm paying, yes, if somebody has long-term care insurance, they should stick with it because they may not be able to switch for a lower cost. So that's just the importance of reviewing what you have, and if you don't have it, we look in to see what's best.
Just a quick show of hands here. How many people have heard of this hybrid policy he was speaking of? Okay, not many. Not many.
It's relatively new. In
Okay.
fact, yeah.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Juanita.
I'm a federal employee retiree, and I have, as long as I live, I have insurance with the federal government. Although I do pay a small amount a month, that's what that is for. But,
Not necessarily so. For federal employees, one, you should talk to the Office of Personnel Management. Get a copy of your benefits. You may have signed up for the federal employee long-term care insurance, but you need to know for sure. The premium that you're paying on a monthly basis is definitely for your health care. And if you have federal employee retiree or anybody have retiree plans for health care, hang on to it for dear life because it's better than Medicare. You can't beat that. The federal government did take care of some folks.
yeah, I did because, they keep sending me mail to go for the things I tried to get you into, and I tried once. And they told me that I had to drop the one with the government, and I said, no way, that's secure.
That's hanging up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Call us if you ever have questions about your health care insurance. Call claim because we can tell you what it is for sure in everyday language.
All right,
It's back there.
we have information in the back, so that completes our time for today. I'd like to ask everybody if you would fill out a survey and leave it. Next month is gonna be the truth about aging in place. So the flip side, and then the truth about wills, trust, and probate the month after. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Hope to see you back next